And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first ever episode of the Crescent Sports Report, produced by Student Media Crescent Magazine. I'm your host, Troy Schrader, here along with my co-host, Cole. Say hello, how's it going?
Hello.
That wasn't my exact quote, but whatever, I guess it'll pass. Evan,
Hey, hey.
Austin,
What's up?
how's it going? We got all four of us up in the stew right now. Real quick, I do want to plug our social medias. Instagram is Crescent Magazine. Twitter is at CRESCENTMAGAZI1, Crescent Magazine 1. And Facebook is at UE Crescent Magazine. Go ahead and follow the socials. But first episode, yeah. So obviously, this time of the year, it's currently March 15th. Tomorrow's marks the start of of March Madness NCAA tournament, like the official bracket play. I mean, there's already been playing games and whatnot, but this is an exciting time for sports. You know, got a lot going on. NFL free agency started yesterday. World Baseball Classic is starting to wrap up, so you know there's a lot of content to go out there. But we're gonna kick it off with some World Baseball Classic content. Austin, you been watching a lot of games?
I've honestly been only watching the USA games when they're on, just because they're at a convenient time for me. Most of the other games are on when class is going on.
Or
So-
it's in China. It's at like 3 a.m.
Yeah, so I've only been able to watch the USA games, and yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, I know that had a few games that just, or I guess at least one game that didn't go the way we wanted it. Mexico was not fantastic. Randy Rosarena just continues to show up in big time moments. Made us look silly after Will Smith just absolutely denied his dap up at the plate, and then Randy goes off for 2 or 3 extra base hits. I mean, lose, but I mean, everyone always views the U.S. as like a top, like a mecca for sports, and we're at danger of not even qualifying for like bracket play.
Yeah.
That's just insane to me. I mean, I know that our roster is not built as good as it could be. Just our pitching staff's kind of weak. Our lineup might be one of the best ever made, but it's just one of those. You know, you go and give up a few runs. Like not every time is your offense going to go out put up 8-9 runs, and then your pitching staff's also going against other great players, and they're kind of mediocre in terms of Major League Baseball, our professional world. I mean, it's going to be difficult.
One thing I wanted to ask you guys, kind of going into this and part of my research, I found out, not really found out, but apparently the U.S., and they're the only team in the World Baseball Classic to do this. They are obeying the parent clubs like Cardinals, Guardians, Brewers, by following their schedule for their pitchers. So if during their training for spring training they're supposed to pitch on this day, the U.S. will pitch them that day. And I think there's some rules like they can't pitch back-to-back days, or they can only go so many pitches or so many innings. And the U.S. is the only club, as far as I know, that is following that routine. So I just wanted to see what you guys thought in terms of how it impacts the games, especially because I was talking with one of my friends today. You know, if we do make it to the quarterfinals, semifinals, finals, and we follow this routine, it's a big game, like you should say 2-1, one-run game in the ninth inning. But you can't use Devin Williams, who's probably one of U.S.'s best relievers, closers in the game. What are you going to do? Are you going to throw a starter out there for the ninth inning and just lose? Or what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely sucks, and it's kind of already come into play. I know when we played against Mexico, we lost 11-5. Daniel Bard was he'd given up 4 runs in 2/3 of an inning. Devin Williams comes in just to get the jam, and the Brewers had a strict rule where if he finishes an inning, he cannot come back out for another. Devin Williams threw 1 pitch, and he was ineligible to come back. Mark DeRosa could not throw him. He used Ryan Presley's, and which is also another all-star, so I mean, I guess it got away there, but that could come into play. And when it's a lose and go home game, and like you said, something like this happens where you have to use Devin Williams, and he's just ineligible the next day, or the Brewers say no, he can't throw this day. What do you do? And then what happens if, say, by chance none of your players are eligible? Like you go into the championship game, we have 2 pitchers available, and one of them gets rocked. What are you going to do? You're just throwing the other one out there. Just say, oh, sorry, you're gonna have to throw the rest of the game. I mean, I don't know how. We don't have a Shohei Ohtani. It's not like you can just pull a dude in from right field and be like, hey, come on, just throw Ched for us. But, yeah, it's kind of unreal. I mean, I wish that the U.S. would have gotten possibly some better pitchers. But, I mean, it is what it is. I think that we still have a shot to win it. So,
This just reminds me of, for me, it's kind of the 2 biggest international sports, I guess, for America, basketball, baseball. The the teams that I guess the NBA, MLB don't see it as international play as important. Because like I mean, you see like the Olympics and stuff, and right now like all the Olympic qualifying for basketball for the FIBA World Cup, um, we're playing with like amateurs. Like most of the guys on this team, they weren't even like they were maybe college stars.
Yeah.
Most of them didn't play like G League. A couple of them played overseas, but they're very. I think is it Aaron Aflalo? Is that
Yeah.
the like best player on the team right now? And he's been out of the league for a while.
Yeah, like
So,
6 years.
Yeah, he's an old guy. I remember him back in
And
like,
even
coaching.
Yeah.
And even when he was in the league, it's not like he was some.
No, he was no star.
He was like.
He was the type of dude that go out and give you 18 a night, no other stats, no recognition. Like he was a shot taker for bad teams.
Yeah, and then, so that's also like I'm seeing because like I'm thinking back. I mean, obviously, the U.S. has still won gold in the Olympics for basketball, but I'm looking at some of the like old FIBA teams, and I mean we still got some stars, but and no shade, Rudy Gay is one of my favorite players. But why is Rudy Gay on like one of our like international squads? That's just should not be the case. And so this is kind of that same thing where. I mean, obviously, a lot of the American players, I think, may have wanted to play and maybe got told no. Obviously, we got some superstars on there as well. But in terms of that pitching thing where they're following the clubs and not allowing those guys to play when maybe they probably should or making them follow a certain schedule, whereas, again, every other country is letting their best guys go when they want them to go, it's just kind of showing that our teams, which I understand – the money behind it all, and you want to have your best players safe and not get hurt or any of that kind of thing. But it just shows that we don't take international sports that seriously as much as we should, at least in the two major sports. Like you look at soccer, I mean, Olympic softball, I watched a lot of that, like all those kinds of things. All the best players want to play, and they're going to give it their all, whereas these guys are, and at least in these two sports, obviously football is international. I feel like we'd probably have a pretty big conflict with that in terms of not wanting to get injured and hurt, but obviously there's not a big pull of overseas people for football, so that's not going to happen anytime soon. But, yeah, that's kind of I feel like if America really wants to maintain themselves as the top sports dogs, we got to start taking these international things seriously.
I think part of the reason is for these, I mean, basketball more so than baseball. Baseball, I mean, like there's a lot of good players from other countries, but like basketball, it's the concentration of stars in America is far greater than any other country. Like you look at some of the best players in the NBA right now, for instance, are foreign, but it's like how many of them come from the same country? You do those Olympics, it's like Luka might play for Slovenia or wherever the hell he's from, and it's Luka and then a bunch of nobodies. You play for the NBA, you're missing you could be missing the top 10 U.S. players, and they're still going to be the best team in the nation. And I think that's kind of the reason why some of the MLB players do that, because they still think like, oh, well, I can sit out, but we've got this guy and that guy that still makes us the best team. And then they're kind of maybe a little bit of arrogance about it, because they're like, why would I waste my time playing in this when I could get ready for a league that really matters and the competition is far greater? But I digress. You were talking about football and how that's not an international draw. I know that the NFL would like to continue pushing that, but start of the new league year happened yesterday. Free agent deals are coming, trades are coming. What do you guys, anyone got any deals they like, dislike?
Can we talk about this Aaron Rodgers fiasco first? Just
Yes.
this
Yes,
whole
I would
drawn-out
love to.
situation.
I'm a
Yes.
Jets fan.
I'm a
over
Jets
here,
fan, so
so
I would
that.
love to talk about it.
So as Jets fans, just talk about it. I mean, I don't know much except that he went into a darkness cave, and he basically told the Packers he wants to go to the Jets. And I think there was a report on the Pat McAfee show that he told Pat McAfee that he's going to play for the Jets in 2023.
Yeah.
So
He
just
wants to.
Yeah, he said that when he went to the darkness retreat, he was 90% set on retiring, which honestly, looking back on it, like at the time, I know that myself and a lot of other Jets fans were probably thinking like, oh, you know what? We're getting Aaron Rodgers for sure. He's going to win us a Super Bowl this year. He's going to come over. And then it keeps getting dragged out. You don't know if he's coming. You don't know if he's coming. People are tweeting that he's like trying to decide still. But like Aaron Rodgers has always said, don't trust a source unless it's Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
So you just kind of keep waiting and waiting. Like Trey Wingo on Monday said that the deal is done, just waiting to be official, so that everyone gets all up in arms and excited about it. And then 2 days go by, you hear nothing until Aaron shows up on Pat McAfee's show and just says, oh, yeah, it's my intention. But now the deal that is supposedly official, and they're just waiting for it to be is not done, or is done, but waiting to be official. Now Aaron Rodgers says the Packers are holding up about compensation. So it's just one of those, like, it feels like every time someone says it's going to happen, something else keeps popping up, which does make me worry a little bit. But I'm optimistic that he'll come.
as a Jets fan, what do you think you guys will be giving up for him?
I've seen several different reports. I used to see, like, at the very beginning of all this, I saw maybe like a first round pick and maybe like a defensive player. Later on, I saw like a second round pick, a fifth round, and Elijah Moore. Then I started seeing like third round pick, Elijah Moore, and just like I saw a lot of Elijah Moore trades, honestly. But I know that he wants out, but the Jets say they aren't going to trade him. But it felt like it went from really high compensation to low compensation, and now they're going back up to even higher compensation because the Packers view him as getting a Matthew Stafford type haul.
Yeah.
So they're wanting at least 2 first round picks. I've seen that the Jets are not going to send their first round pick this year. So I mean, that could be something. I mean, it's not a bad year to keep a first round pick because you've got a lottery pick. You don't have to worry about quarterback if you're getting Aaron Rodgers, and a lot of other teams are gonna. There's a lot of quarterbacks that are good. I think your offensive weapons are fine after you already signed Alan Lazard. A-Rod wants to play with OBJ. You already have Garrett Wilson, Offensive Rookie of the Year. I really think that it just comes down to offensive tackle, and I think that this is a good draft to get one. I don't know, now that free agency's been going on long enough, I don't know what tackles are out there now that you could sign and then give you the value that you would get out of like a Peter Skoronski or Broderick Jones or Paris Johnson. Like, I think that those draft picks are going to be your best bet. But if you have to give them up to get Aaron Rodgers, it's what you have to do. Like, there should be no holds barred. They're doing absolutely what they have to. But
So when the Jets say they are not trading Elijah Moore anymore, does that scare you? Like, oh snap, we might have to trade a guy like Jermaine Johnson now instead.
no,
You haven't seen anything
because
like that.
I don't think that they will trade a young star. It'd be one thing if we traded a young player that just isn't that good. Jermaine Johnson just didn't play a whole lot. He was injured a little bit. We had a good D line. He was efficient when he played. I don't think that we give someone like that up. I think that they will rather give up the first round picks than give up those young players, which is what I'm all for. But I mean, again, if we're able to bring some guys back, I think that they're still waiting on Quinnen, trying to sign an extension. They converted, I want to say, some of John Franklin Myers, some of his, or was it Lawson? One of the two, some of their salary into signing bonus. So they're going to bring them back. If we've already got a good D line, I think maybe you can get away with trading him. I would rather not. But if you're asking about Jermaine Johnson in particular, I already said my thoughts. But Elijah Moore in particular, I think that I would personally be okay with it. I mean, he didn't play a whole huge role this past year. I know that he was quite frustrated. Zach Wilson wasn't the best. But we already signed Lazard. They're talking about adding another tight end. Randall Cobb's experienced. I mean, he's not going to be fantastic. Don't get me wrong. No one, like 55-year-old Randall Cobb, no one's expecting 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns. But OBJ is a possibility. I think that you've already got 3 potential good receivers in your room, and you've got Denzel Mims, who has like the athletic makeup, the skill. He just hasn't really put it all together, and we haven't had great QB play. I think that you can get away with trading Elijah Moore. Like, I don't think that it's going to trade and it's going to come back to bite us in the ass unless he goes ballistic. But like, who's going to see that coming?
I mean, also out on the free agency market, you could get a guy like Adam Thielen.
Exactly.
I don't know how much is.
I know the Jets have reached out to him. I don't see it happening just because the cap space, we're already focusing on restructuring that to fit Aaron Rodgers. If we could somehow free up some more and then go and sign, because they already have talked to OBJ. If they sign or if they trade for Rodgers, I think they go for OBJ next. After that, I don't think we have room to really make a big, like, except to sign someone to like a minimum. I don't think we have room to just add, you know.
With all these signings, where do you project the Jets to be at the end of the season? Do you see them making the playoffs? Do you see them making a deep run?
I sure hope they make a deep run. This past year, I know that I was really optimistic, even though Zach Wilson was out playing with Joe Flacco. I was like, all right, I was like, it's not fantastic, but like, it'll do. And then Zach comes back. We're winning games. I thought this is a whole new Zach Wilson. Then that one game with the Patriots happened, and he didn't take credit for scoring 3 points and said he didn't let the defense down. And then it just felt like everything went to shit from there. I mean, we had a fantastic defense. Breece Hall getting hurt really sucked as well. A lot of injuries to the O-line kind of killed our run game. We weren't really a pass-first team. But I think this year, honestly, the ceiling is definitely a Super Bowl. I mean, you trade for one of the most talented, best quarterbacks of all time. You run back almost the same offense as last year, plus an extra weapon or two. you run back the exact same defense, which was a top 5 defense in the entire league last year. I mean, I really don't see a way that the Jets don't make the playoffs, barring injury or some insane regression by either the defense or Aaron Rodgers.
So you say you don't see them not making the playoffs. Do you see them capturing the AFC East seed, or do you think they're a wild card team?
I would love to see them capture the AFC East, but the AFC East is a fantastic division. I mean, you got Josh Allen, probably the second best quarterback in the entire league right now. Second, third best. Cole's flashing me a 3 right now. He doesn't think Josh Allen's up there. But, I mean, you got one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Miami's got an electric offense. They got Tua, who turned the page, got way better. He's got Tyreek. He's got Jalen Waddle, who's got weapons. They
But
can trade
with
for Jalen Ramsey, got
with
better defense.
but with Tua though, if one more head injury, his career's over. There's no doubt about that.
Hey, they just signed Mike White though, right? So he's
Yeah.
coming back with a vengeance against you guys.
There's a chance
he
even
could.
though that like Tua's career might be over like coming into this year because like he had 3 concussions, like 3 like really bad concussions just in 1 year. Most people don't come back from 3 concussions in like like entire career. So
I think
Yeah.
it's more Buffalo. I think that's your big.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's
that
Buffalo overall.
yeah, Buffalo for sure. But I mean, the Patriots, they're still really solid. You got Bill Belichick. You're never out of a playoff hunt. But I think the Dolphins could possibly pose a threat. But yeah, it's really the Bills. So I really do think that we beat them this past year with Zach Wilson. So I really think that we have an opportunity to beat them and then capture the AFC East. But I mean, hey, once you get into the playoffs, anything's possible. So I'm just as long as they clinch the playoff berth, I'm happy.
Yeah, I think that's where you guys probably need to be. Obviously, the AFC is just.
The AFC is insane.
But I don't know. I think you guys with Rodgers, I don't think it's the best choice. I would have personally gone after Lamar. The problem with the Lamar thing is obviously you'd lose all your money, and then you
Yeah.
also lose the 2 firsts.
Yeah.
Whereas with
Yeah.
Rodgers, if you just want to go big or go home, you take the trade, you pay in the money, you trade away picks because you don't care because you're not going to get more than 3 years out of Rodgers at this point. I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
think
And
he's just not going to make it.
the way the coaching staff and the front office has talked, they seemed like they're still high on Zach Wilson. They still have a plan to keep him on the team and he be a part of future plans. But if you bring in someone like Lamar, Zach's future is done in New York. But I think you bring in Aaron Rodgers, you bring in Nathaniel Hackett. Like he's a great QB's coach. Like he works really well with the quarterbacks and the offense. I think that Aaron can not mentor him because he's focused on playing. I think if he can learn from Aaron, just being on the field with him, being in the locker room, like Zach could potentially be someone that could still get you to win at high level games. I'm not saying he's going to come out here and be a Patrick Mahomes and he's the reason you're winning, but I think he can still get you to possibly where you want to go.
Yeah, but do you want Aaron Rodgers, who's kind of a locker room, not necessarily a locker room cancer, but the mental head case that's Aaron Rodgers, while you already have the locker room cancer that's Wilson? I don't know if you want Wilson learning a lot of Rodgers in terms of headspace, maybe a little bit in terms of pass plays, but the rest of it, I feel like Rodgers is not the guy you want with Wilson. I think they're better off. I don't know who wants Wilson, but somebody would probably take him for something that you guys could use this draft maybe.
But honestly, though, with Aaron Rodgers coming in, like if we get rid of Zach Wilson, his stock is at an all-time low. If you get Aaron Rodgers, you let him sit, people are thinking, oh, he's learning from one of the greatest of all time. He doesn't have to have the stress and the pressure on him to perform as QB1 like he did rookie season and this past year. Maybe his stock rises a little bit, you get a little bit more. Maybe that's their plan to hold all along, just hold on to an extra year or two, trade him when his stock's a little bit higher. But I don't know. I mean, Zach Wilson had that one misstep, but since then it seems like the Jets players have been not necessarily behind him, but supportive, and it doesn't seem like Zach Wilson's just constantly doing things like that just put the locker room in turmoil. It was that one misstep that just really just snowballed a lot of things, and just he kind of became stuck in his own head. So I know a lot of the decisions he second-guessed himself.
I think another thing you have to keep in mind, especially with Zach Wilson, is that, yeah, you're saying that Aaron Rodgers can be a mentor to Zach Wilson, and if he makes Zach Wilson better, great. But as a team, I don't think you're going to want to risk that by trading for Zach Wilson next year because you absolutely need a quarterback, and then it just falls flat, and he didn't really develop into who you thought he was. So I think as the Jets, you're probably going to have to use Zach Wilson maybe next year, maybe in 2 years, to see if he had actually developed from having Aaron Rodgers as a quote-unquote mentor and see if he's actually gotten better. Because if he's not, then obviously no team's going to want him and the Jets are stuck with him. And I don't think any team is going to want to risk that just because he was behind Aaron Rodgers for a season.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you're gonna have to judge that off of like off-season workouts, preseason stuff like that, like all the games in there. But I mean, honestly, like no teams are right now like just banging down the Jets door. We want Zach Wilson, trade him to us. What's it gonna take? But say he sits, he looks good in training camps, like OTAs, and then the preseason he plays well, and then a year from now you got someone like the Commanders that just love to have three mediocre quarterbacks and just like carousel through them. It just seems like they've always got someone that's like, oh, well, we'll take a flyer on Carson Wentz and we'll try to run it back with Sam Darnold and all this stuff. Like, it's just they keep running quarterbacks out there that you don't think are going to win, but the Commanders seem confident in it. So, I mean, as long as there's one team delusional enough to just be like, you know what, we'll throw you a few draft picks or a player, I think the Jets are like, please, we'll take it. But yeah, I could sit and talk about the Jets for a very long time, but there are a lot of other moves being made. One in particular I do not like with the quarterback market, Jimmy G to the Raiders. I'm not a fan.
Why not?
I think that the Raiders, they got rid of Derek Carr. They're already overhauling their offense. I mean, I don't know if Devontae Adams stays or not. They already traded Darren Waller. Like I said, they cut Derek Carr. But then you go and sign Jimmy G to 3 years for $25 million a year, and he's just like he's a Derek Carr clone. And you already have a high draft pick if you're the Raiders. You can possibly package a little something, trade up. I mean, Anthony Richardson, C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, they're probably not there at 7 realistically. So, I mean, I get it a little bit where you're like, oh, just in case. But if you were so worried about a quarterback, why are you not trying to trade up? It feels like they're just like, oh, let's just pay a lot of money for a QB. So we're not going to be absolutely terrible. Like, at that point, just embrace the suck, tank one more year. You can draft Caleb Williams or something like that. I don't know why they're like, oh, it's so content on trying to get 6 wins.
And off that point, too, they traded away Darren Waller. So what is their goal? If you're going to sign Jimmy G, why aren't you keeping Darren Waller for Jimmy G to have those weapons?
Exactly. That's what I don't like. The Raiders are going to Raider, and they always do things that I'm just like, what are you doing? They draft people that are head cases at the time, and people are like, this guy's not going to be any good. 2 years later, he's a DUI. They cut him. And it feels like every year people are telling the Raiders, don't do this. They still do it, and then it sucks.
In their last, I think, 5 drafts, they have not kept a single one of their first-round picks except for Josh Jacobs. He's the only pick that they have kept, and they've had like 7 first-round picks.
Which is unreal. And maybe they're scared now that they're like, maybe our drafting strategy sucks so bad that we don't want to take a quarterback. We're just going to roll with Jimmy G, hope that we can draft elsewhere or sign like a few stopgaps and maybe do a little bit better than people expect. But I really just don't know where they're going with the signing.
What is the breaking point for the Raiders this year? I mean, you are signing Jimmy G, so I mean you're not going to contend in the AFC West.
No,
there's no way.
Absolutely not.
So I mean, I think a lot of people expected the Chiefs to fall off, and then they won the Super Bowl last year.
Yep.
What are you going to expect from the Raiders, and what's going to be the breaking point for Josh Jacobs or Devontae Adams? We're like, we just won out. We're done.
Yeah.
I think literally the breaking point is going to be Jimmy G's foot, because he's gonna get hurt again, and then I don't know what their plan is at all with.
Who's
that.
their backup?
It was Jarrett Stidham, but he just signed away, so they don't have one on the roster. They'll have to sign someone, or they'll have to possibly take like a late round flyer on like a Max Duggan, Dorian Thompson Robinson.
Where do you think Hendon Hooker will go? How early? Because there's a chance they might take him possibly.
Maybe they're trying to do what Tennessee did. Take like a Malik Hooker, like an absolute, like kind of somebody that's a little off the radar, but kind of an athletic stud that could turn into something insane. So they want Jimmy G for now, maybe as a mentor, and then maybe they'll take one of those more athletic, raw talent guys. But
honestly, if that's the case, I mean, I don't hate it. I mean, you can kind of let him sit, see how he develops if you get an athletic guy like that. But DTR is dual threat, really fast, explosive, athletic. I mean, I think that you possibly could do that, just kind of see how he develops. But I just really, like you said, the breaking point, if the Raiders, like if Jimmy G gets hurt, like Evan said, then at that point, I think the Raiders have to embrace the tank. Like at that point, if it's before the trade deadline, you trade Devontae, you trade Josh Jacobs, you get as many draft picks as possible. You maybe look to move Jimmy G in the offseason, and then you just try to draft a quarterback at that point. But I think that if the Raiders get like another top 8 pick, I think Devontae Adams at this point is like, okay, like I want out of here. He goes to the Raiders to A, get his money, B, play with his friend Derek Carr, and C, possibly have a good team. Derek Carr is gone after 1 year. His team is absolutely terrible. I mean, he got his money, but at what cost?
Yeah.
I'm almost wondering if this is you said 3 deal, right? 3-year deal.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I wonder if they think after 3 years, Kansas City's dynasty will be over. The Chargers, who knows what's going to go on with them, and then the Broncos, same kind of thing. They're just a mess.
Yeah.
So maybe they're just hoping that after 3 years, maybe they're just paying Jimmy G now so they can at least build a little bit of culture, be somewhat competitive, and hope after that
Yeah.
3-year mark, Kansas City's done. Russell Wilson's still doing dumb stuff in Denver,
Yep.
and for some reason the Chargers couldn't figure out how to utilize Herbert. But
Yeah.
I mean, I think the Chargers are a great team. I don't think Staley's a great coach. I think that if they want to actually contend, they need to get rid of him. I'm not a fan. I feel
go
like
for it on every fourth down. That's recipe for success. That's why every
Yeah.
team has done that for the past however many years football's been around.
I mean, I do like that, but I feel like there's so many times that he mismanages the offense. Like it'll be like I get if it's like 4th and short, go for it. You got a good offense, but it's like you're on your own 25, down a touchdown, 4 minutes or not 4 minutes left, like a whole quarter left. Let me just go for it. 4th and 15. It's like you give this up, they're already in field goal range.
Well, Eckler wants out, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's
Yes.
Yeah.
seeking
So
a trade
what,
right
they
now.
already
so-
release
what are
him?
you doing? Yeah.
No, they didn't release him. They're
Oh.
seeking a trade, but the
Yeah.
Cowboys did release Zeke today.
Yeah,
They
I
did
saw
do
that.
But
Yeah.
I don't know. But to your point about maybe the AFC West dying off and then in a few years Jimmy G's leading the Raiders to a Super Bowl, I'll be damned if that happens. Like straight up, like the Raiders would look like absolute geniuses and that would be a first for my lifetime, but I see no way that that happens because Jimmy G made the Super Bowl one time and lost, and that was because the 49ers had the best defense in the league, no doubt that year, and some other weapons around him. The Raiders have Josh Jacobs, who don't get me wrong is good, but I mean, running back is just an overvalued position at this point. You get a good
Yes.
O-line, anyone can go out there and average 3 yards per carry.
Yep.
Not anyone, but any NFL actual running back that deserves to
Yeah.
be on a roster can be serviceable. You trade away a tight end who was 2 years ago a Pro Bowler. You barely use him.
But now he's hurt every other game, making however much money he was. That them trading him was a good trade. Just they didn't get back what they needed.
Yeah. And Devontae Adams, like, I don't really see a way that he's still on the team in 3 years. I think at that point, like, they're going to be bad enough that they're just like, you know what, we'll trade and get what we want. And even say somehow that he sticks around, I don't see a way that he's as good as what he is currently. And Jimmy G does not have that Niners defense. He has the Raiders defense. And, like,
Yes.
let's be honest.
The
Like, the
Raiders
Raiders are
defense
just
is
not
not
good.
good.
Their roster is not good.
I don't know how patient both Jacobs and Devontae Adams are going to be, but if they like come out the gates just stumbling, like 1-12 or whatever,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
at what point do they request a trade? They're just done after this year with the Raiders.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think that you go ahead.
I think if they are under 2 wins going into the trade deadline, Jacobs and Devontae are like locks to ask for a trade,
Mm-hmm.
and then maybe even Max Crosby.
I wouldn't even be surprised if Devontae asked for a trade this offseason still. Like, he played 1 year. I wouldn't even be surprised if he's like, no, I went out now.
well, I don't know if you've seen Devontae's tweet, but it sounds like he's going to at least try Jimmy
Mhm.
G.
Yeah.
So we'll
Mhm.
see how that works out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's always a possibility that something crazy happens. They go out and win a bunch of games when no one's expecting it, and somehow their roster of like a ragtag team of misfits goes out and wins a bunch of games. But personally, I don't see the vision.
I don't see it at all either.
Nothing like being in one of the best divisions in football, having a bad roster, and then being like, you know what, let's sign a quarterback to a lot of money and then make our roster worse while still being in the same division, and every other team stays the same. Great thought process, but
Hey, whatever works for them.
I guess. I mean, maybe there's a reason I'm not an NFL GM, but so on everyone's minds, I mean, games are tipping off relatively soon. They probably already tipped off already for the play-ins today. Bracket officially starts tomorrow. What's everyone thinking? You got like upsets, Cinderella runs, sleeper picks.
The question I want to know is who's the 15 seed that's winning in the first round? Who do you guys think?
I really like these 2 seeds. UCLA
Yeah.
is UCLA. I mean,
Yep.
they've looked good all season. Obviously, they lost to Arizona, right, in their
Yeah.
tournament. So, I mean, Arizona's another 2 seed.
Exactly.
Arizona's phenomenal, and they're way too big. I watched that Princeton game when they beat Yale, I think, and they're not going to be able to handle it. Athletically, Arizona's way too big. Texas, I feel like, is probably the best team in that area.
Mhm.
Because,
Yeah.
I mean, I think Houston's terrible, especially if
Same.
Sasser's got
Yeah.
that groin injury.
I think
Exactly.
I
Groins
think
are
Houston's
so
overrated.
hard. Groins are so hard to play with.
And
I think IU's the second best team in that bracket part, but
And honestly, like I could still even possibly see an IU upset. Like I don't think that it's like guaranteed to happen because there are some upsets, that you're just like, this is a lock. I remember a few years ago when Ohio played Virginia. Jason Preston's on the team. Is like a 13-4. I was like, you know what, this is a lock. I had Ohio in almost all of my brackets, upsetting them, and they did. But I just don't feel certain about that one. But I think if a 2 seed were to lose, I've seen a lot of people say that UCLA, UNC Asheville is going to be good, especially with Jalen Clark out.
Yep.
I think UCLA still wins that.
Yeah, I feel like that's the biggest chance because Marquette's the other 2 seed, and I think Marquette's really, really good. They're built for a tournament, at
Yes,
least. They got great guard play. They got the best coach.
So this year was the year that I paid attention to college basketball the most out of the 21 years I've been alive. I have not heard a single thing about Marquette whatsoever.
Yeah, seriously, it feels like they just fly under the radar.
So that's because at the beginning of the season is when we were hearing all this stuff about UCLA, UNC, or USC coming to Big Ten. We heard about all the SEC nonsense and how everybody's thinking down the road that there's going to be those like 2 super conferences between the SEC and Big Ten. So nobody's paying attention to basketball at the beginning of the year. And if they are, it's because they're paying attention to the Big Ten, SEC. Obviously, ACC has the Blue Bloods, and the Big 12. A lot of teams obviously pay attention to the Big 12. Nobody cares about the Big East at all. And at the beginning of the season, because I'm a Purdue fan, so boiler up. Let's get it. This is our year, right? Zach Edey. Hopefully he comes back, too, so we can back-to-back it maybe.
You're one player who's going to score 40 points in the first round
Hey,
and
you know
will
what?
squeak out a 2-point win.
Stranger things have happened. But
a win's a win.
Purdue beat Marquette at the beginning of the year, and I watched that game. And I was very surprised we won that because I thought Marquette was going to be a strong test. Obviously, Purdue, no one thought was going to be good at the beginning of the season. I didn't think Purdue was going to be good through the season. I thought we were going to be middle of Big Ten, maybe make the NIT. But obviously, great surprise there. But that Marquette win, I always knew was a big deal because Marquette, for some reason, they're just one of those weird teams. Same with Xavier. IU did the same thing and beat Xavier at the beginning of the year. And that was a really big win. Obviously, nobody has their eyes really on the Big East, but anytime you beat a Big East team, they're always in the tournament. They always play well, like Seton Hall,
Exactly.
St. Louis, like all those kinds of, like, nobody really cares about them, but then they come to the tournament. I mean, you look back, way back, UConn obviously was amazing for a long time, and then you had those 2 Butler years where they went to the tournament back-to-back years when nobody thought they were any good. So Big East teams, they play really solid brand of basketball, and it's different from all the other styles. Like Big Ten is really physical, feed your bigs, play solid basketball. SEC is who's got the guy that can jump out of the gym and shoot the most threes. ACC is about stars. Big 12 and Big East, I feel like, are the 2 areas that really play solid, just a different style of basketball where they still care about their fundamentals, but they also let their guys do what they need to do. And then Shaka Smart, I mean, I've loved him since he was at VCU all those years ago, turning them around. So
I'm honestly surprised that people don't give the respect to the Big East that it deserves. Like, it historically is a great conference, and it feels like people just like
Villanova. I didn't even say them.
Exactly, Villanova, and they've won 2 championships in the past 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's like they were still a 500 team. Their head coach just retired, so I mean they weren't as good as obviously years past. But the Big East at almost half their conference make the tournament. They got 5 teams in it, and their lowest seed is they have a 2 seed, a 3 seed, a 6 seed, a 4 seed, and an 11 seed.
Yeah.
Like, you got some damn good teams in that, and people just don't respect them. It's like you said, like, Marquette's a 2 seed, and no one talks about them. Just be like, oh, well, it's the Big East. Like, that's realistically in basketball, the Big East could probably be a Power 5 conference over, like, the Pac-12.
Yeah.
Because the Pac-12 always has, like, that one team that's just like, oh, watch out for them this year, and then losing the second round, being a 2 seed.
Yep.
Arizona.
Yep, exactly. And then UCLA, I thought actually could have been a really good team, but then they lose Jalen Clark. I mean, I could still see him making a run, but it's just when you lose your best defensive player when in a game like stars are so prevalent, like I think that's something that's going to be very difficult to overcome.
And honestly, the Big East was probably better, not even probably, was better than the ACC this year.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
the ACC was so overrated. They had UNC coming in as the 1 seed. They're not even playing in the NIT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
to be fair, they would have been playing in the NIT.
But
They
they-
just turned it down. But
yeah, but you know what I'm saying.
In terms of upset, I'm putting it on the record right now. I've got Auburn going pretty far. I think Iowa, their guards are not very physical, so I think Auburn's going to take them down pretty quick. And then I think they're going to take it to Houston. Houston has not looked good very recently, and if Sasser is hurt, that's not even a 5 seed team. So
yeah, I mean,
I've got
I think
Auburn blowing through those first 2 games.
I think if somehow Houston can make it to the Final Four, it's going to be difficult to beat Houston because it's at Houston. But like, I don't see a way that Houston makes it that far, because every time that you see someone, like, when was the last time that a non-Power 5 team won the championship. And again, this is going to go back to Villanova with the Big East, UConn with the Big East. But like I said, like they could realistically be in a Power 5 for basketball over the Pac-12. Like when has a champion come from either like a conference that wasn't the ACC, SEC, Big 12, Big 10, or Big East? Like the AAC, like no disrespect, like they've got some solid teams, but Houston's going to come in, everyone's going to be like, oh, Houston's a 1 seed, they're going to be pretty good, and then they get eliminated before the Sweet 16.
I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure they've been a 1 seed the last or 1 or 2 seed the last 2 years, and I don't think they've gotten past the Elite Eight.
It's like Gonzaga.
Gonzaga,
Every
Gonzaga's
year, I
the
feel like,
exact
especially when we were growing up
Yeah.
and stuff, I felt like Gonzaga was always a
Yes.
1 seed, and then they never got out of the Sweet 16.
The
Obviously,
one-
they had that undefeated season, and then they still lost to Baylor.
And they got wiped in that game.
Yeah.
It's like everyone's like, oh my gosh, Gonzaga's so good. And then Baylor beats them by like 25.
A lot of people think Gonzaga is going to be really good in this year's tournament because they're kind of, I think it was, I forget who it was, either Jay Billis or Dick Vitale. Somebody said they had Gonzaga going pretty far because they're kind of under the radar this year.
Yeah.
I don't see it. Like I mean, they do. The West is pretty weak down that bottom part. Like UCLA and I feel like Northwestern are the 2 best teams other than Gonzaga in the bottom half of the West. And at the top, nobody's really good there.
Yeah.
UConn maybe, but St.
Yeah.
Mary's is not going to do much, I don't think. And then
Me neither.
I mean, obviously, I think Kansas is coming Final Four out of that area, but
Just real quick, going back to what Troy asked. I don't know if they were in the Mountain West in 1990, but the last non-Power 5 team to win was in 1990, and it was UNLV.
Okay, that might have been. If I would have thought about it, I might have come up with that. But like I knew they won a championship. I thought there might have been one closer. But like 1990, that's not one of those 5
Greg
conferences I named.
Anthony UNLV, is that team?
Yeah, they beat Duke.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
And-
well.
Evan, you said you like Auburn. I'm not gonna lie. I've made 6, 7 brackets. I plan on making good 5, 6 more before the tournament actually kicks off tomorrow.
Mhm.
I don't know if I have Auburn making it past the second round in any of
Really?
them. Like
Yes.
I watched them play West Virginia because I'm a big West Virginia fan, and I really wasn't impressed. It was a 1-point game, but that was with us trying our hard, or a 3-point game, excuse me, and it was us trying our hardest to give it away at the end when we had a big lead all game. Since January 25th, they are 5-9, and some of these games they're getting absolutely drilled. Like they played Vanderbilt, lost to Vanderbilt. Played Kentucky, lost by 32. They played some obviously some good teams. Like you play Texas A&M, who's in the tournament. You play Tennessee, who at the time was a 2 seed. They're the number 2 team in the nation at the time, 4 seed now. Play Alabama twice in that span. So like there are some good teams, but like at the same time they're just getting wiped.
Yeah, so the reason I like Auburn is 2 things. One, their point guard, I forget his name. That
Green.
guy
Was it Wendell Green?
maybe jacks up threes galore. Like the guy just loves shooting the ball. Again, Purdue fan, I feel like he could have himself a Carson Edwards tournament where he's just the only reason they win because he just cannot miss. That happens in a lot of tournaments. And the other reason, I think Bruce Pearl is an insane coach, and he gets his guys fired up and ready to play. Especially first round game, you got a Big Ten game. Big Ten teams struggle because
That's true.
they're very complacent, fundamental teams. They don't get that energy, that spark. That's why they struggle a lot. So I feel like he's going to be able to fire them up. And then again, I don't think Houston's any good. So I think I've got them
Yeah.
easily getting past those 2. After that, it's either going to – I think it's – a lot of people have Drake or Kent State being upsets there. I gotta root for Miami. My neighbor Nigel Pack is on that team, so I gotta root for them. Isaiah Wong's good, and if their big man isn't hurt, that guy that got hurt against Duke at the beginning of that game, if he's back, he's gonna be a problem.
Yeah.
That'll be a good game. That'll be a game that I want to watch.
I think
Miami and
that-
Drake, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that Drake actually like does have a pretty decent chance. And like honestly, whether it's Indiana or Kent State, I think that Drake realistically could make a Sweet 16 run.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if they make it. I mean, honestly, like maybe even Elite 8 because you get past the Sweet 16. Like we were talking about the Houston game, and then Iowa Auburn. I think whether I don't have Auburn winning in many of my brackets, but I think whether Iowa or Auburn wins that game, they are moving on to the Sweet 16. Like I
Yeah.
don't see Houston making it
Mm.
past around 32. But then after that, you got Drake. It's like anything can happen. Like you got a 12 seed against an 8 or a 9. I mean,
The 12s are scary this year.
yeah,
Yeah.
seriously.
I've heard a lot of
Yes,
people
they
talking about Charleston and San Diego State. I mean, I don't think they're that insane, so there's a good chance Charleston could get
Mhm.
there. And Virginia has not looked good. There's a chance Furman could beat them. And then you look, Oral Roberts. I mean, they've got Admis, right? And then that
Yeah.
guy's
Yeah,
just
Ace
an
Miss,
He's
yeah.
crazy.
Fuck.
And then they've got you talk about size on their team that you might be like, oh, they might be undersized. They have a center who's 7'5" and nails threes at like a 35% clip.
Yeah.
Like they potentially run into Purdue in the Sweet 16, And even then, like, you think, like, oh, who's going to match up with Edey? Like, don't get me wrong, this guy's not huge. He's not built like Edey, but, like, you still got the potential, like,
Yeah.
size to guard
You
him.
can't just do the little baby hook over him. He's going to actually have
Exactly.
to play some muscle there.
Yeah, that guy's blocked over 100 shots this year.
Yeah.
So he averages,
And
like, 3 a game.
The last 12's VCU.
Yep.
And St. Mary's, I mean, they have a lot of tournament success, I feel like, but, again, that's St. Mary's. That's not a
Yeah.
power team, so.
They're in the same conference as Gonzaga, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah, so I don't feel like they're coming in as like a great team. I feel like VCU can very easily just like knock them out first round.
Yeah, and I mean VCU, they cause a lot of turnovers. They
Yeah.
like really pester you with the ball. But St. Mary's plays really, really slow. Like I'm talking bottom 5 in the nation in tempo.
Yeah.
I mean, VCU, like, they cause a lot of turnovers. They turn the ball over a lot too. So it's like really volatile. I mean, like some teams that can get streaky. But I think if you can speed up St. Mary's, you can just get in the passing lanes. You can hound the ball handlers. I think they genuinely do have a chance to at least make it out of the first round, because whenever you see a big change in tempo, that's just what throws a lot of people off. Like I know that there are a lot of teams that play like really, really slow and then just slow it up against the teams that run fast, and that's how you end up seeing an upset. Like same thing with Kansas State. Kansas State is one of the fastest tempo teams in the tournament, and Montana State is one of the slowest. I mean, don't get me wrong, Kansas State's great both sides of the ball. They're like top 50 in adjusted efficiency for offense and defense, and they're one of the top teams to KenPom. They've got like 2 players that are third-team
Keontae's been
All-Americans.
Insane.
Yeah,
All season.
but they turn the ball over like it's going out of style. Like it's unreal. They can't hold on to the ball. And then Montana State forces a lot of turnovers, and they play really slow. So it's like you're not speeding people up fast break. Like you turn the ball over, and then we're gonna work the ball around. Like there's not a lot of possessions there. So I mean, Montana State has got absolutely drilled. Their last 3 games against tournament competition, they lost all of them by at least 25 points, I believe. So I mean, that's not positive. But I do genuinely think that Montana State, if they hit some shots, cause a few turnovers, slow the game down a little bit, like Kansas State could be in trouble.
I hope not. I want to see Kansas State, Kentucky.
Yeah, I genuinely, I have some brackets where like I have Kansas State winning one of them. I think they
Yeah,
genuinely do
same.
have a chance to make a run, but like I think that Montana State possibly has like could have their number,
Again,
just has like their kryptonite.
It's one night.
Mhm.
One game doesn't matter who's
Anything
better.
could happen.
Just-
Kind of like last year, like barely anyone's got St. Peter's, and then Kentucky's like favorite 2 seed to win the tournament,
Yeah.
lose first round. You know,
And then St. Peter's goes
anything
on
could happen.
Elite 8 run.
Yeah. Could Providence beat Kentucky in the first round?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't know what Kentucky's problem is.
Yeah,
I mean, at the beginning of the season, I got a friend who's a pretty big Kentucky fan. I talked to him, and they kept saying that, like, Calipari was calling out plays, and the players intentionally were not running them, so that's obviously a problem. But it's so weird that they, like, I feel like it's Calipari's fault more than anything.
yeah.
Because they have so much talent, and you brought back Shebue,
Mhm.
and you just can't figure it out. I'm wondering if maybe this team will be more of a tournament built team and less of a regular season built team, inverse of last year, because Shebue is just going to do his thing, but they at least have some other guys that are more scorers,
Mhm.
mainly Jacob Toppin, who I don't
Mhm.
actually think is very good, but he could have a game where he just goes off. But again, Providence is a solid team.
I know that Kentucky in the past has always had problems with adjusting their game plan, especially with St. Peter's last year. It's like they tried something, St. Peter's was ready for it, didn't work. Instead of being like, you know what, this didn't work, let's try to pivot and focus on something else. Calipari's like, nope, we're going to play to our strengths, keep hammering this, but St. Peter's just ready for it, and it's just Kentucky stood no chance. I mean, I think he might be open to it now that he's been getting criticized like year in, year out, but I don't know. I mean, Kentucky's one of the best rebounding teams in the league, and it might be like, oh, we're going to get so many offensive boards. Like, we get a lot of second chance points as it is. But Providence is just as good. They're also a top team in rebounding. And Kentucky has a tendency to go, like, absolutely ice cold from 3. Like, I'm talking, like, 1 of 18 type numbers they'll go out there, put up as a team. If Providence can just grab rebounds, and then they shoot really well from the line, too. So if they grab rebounds and then get to the line, like, you get possibly Shebue in foul trouble, like, that's a big deal.
And that's one of Kentucky's biggest problems is like they're in foul trouble consistently every game.
Mhm.
So
Constantly got guys. Like, I think Providence, like, you attack the glass, you attack the rim whenever you're on offense. Like, you draw fouls, go to the line, you know you can make them. I think that Providence does have a very, very, very realistic chance.
Yeah, I'm
to
looking
beat
at their
Kentucky.
notable games. Providence, they beat UConn, then lost twice, but they did beat UConn. They beat Marquette
Yep.
and lost Marquette. They split it with Creighton,
mhm.
And their other losses says they lost to Xavier twice, TCU by 13, Miami only by 10. Those aren't bad losses.
Yeah, that sounds like
Yeah,
pretty
those are
good-
other-
those sound like pretty good games.
It'd
And
be
then
one
I
thing
look
if
at
you're losing by
Kentucky.
10 to like someone that's absolutely terrible. You're playing Rutgers. I mean, Rutgers isn't terrible. They're just the first team that came out of my head. They're not even in the tournament, which they got snubbed, by the way. But you're losing to a team that's like TCU's a 6 seed, Miami's a 5 seed, Xavier's a 3 seed. Like all your losses are coming
Yeah.
to like high seeds.
Yeah, I'm looking at UK, and man, lost by 10 to UCLA, 16 to Gonzaga. They did beat Tennessee twice,
Yeah.
but they lost to Alabama by 26.
A lot of good
They
wins,
kept
a lot
it
of bad
close,
losses.
only 9 to Kansas. Beat Texas A&M by 9. Split it with Arkansas. uh, Lost to Michigan State by 9. That was a bad loss. But then they beat Auburn by 32.
Yeah,
So
like
they're
beating
just-
Auburn by
they're just
32.
So inconsistent.
Yeah, exactly. It's just it's depending on the night. There's two different Kentucky teams. Like like you said, you beat Tennessee twice. Those are both great wins. You beat them both times out. Like that's a difficult thing to do against a 4 seed.
It's got to be matchups, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
And then against Auburn, you beat them by 32. They're still a tournament team. It's like a lot, like you said, just a lot of teams. You're like, wow, can't believe they beat them by that much. And a lot of teams they should win or should beat them, and then they just lose.
What's the line of success for Kentucky? I feel like you have to make the Sweet 16 for people to be somewhat happy. And it's tough because they have a tough draw. They play Providence, and then they're most likely going to play Kansas State. Like, that is tough. But, like you said, like, people aren't happy with Calipari right now. You think, if maybe if it's a close game against Providence and they lose, okay, Providence is a great team, like you guys have mentioned.
Yeah.
However, if they get blown out by Providence, like, by 20, like, do people want Calipari fired? Or
I've seen
I
people-
could see that happening. I
I've
could
seen
see
people
Calipari
that
gone.
kind of want him gone already. Like they're just kind of
Yeah.
fed up. Like, what are you doing? Like you recruit well, but then you coach like shit.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that I actually have seen a few reports that now that Texas's job is open because they fired Chris Beard, if I'm then I'm just signing your interim head coach.
they're
Like, he's
hiring
been-
that guy. He's
He's
too
been
good.
fantastic,
Yeah.
but
The
there have been
players love
reports.
him.
There have been reports that John Calipari and Texas have mutual interest. So I mean, if you're gonna jump ship, why not go to a team that's already like in possibly the best basketball conference in the world? Gonna go or in the nation. You go over to like another. They're jumping ship to the SEC, but like you go to another fantastic program, which I hate saying because I hate Texas so much, but.
But think about the consequences. Like, how many? You said the players love the new interim coach. How many people are going to jump ship because Calipari's coming over? Like, you say they have a good program, sure, and yeah, Calipari is good at recruiting. Yeah, but you have that established program at Texas. If players jump ship, anything can happen.
Yeah, I mean, Texas has got some players that I believe are done after this year, so there's going to have a little bit of roster turnover naturally. But I mean, Kentucky's already got like I think a pretty solid recruiting class. You got players that are expecting Coach Cal to be there, and this late, like say after the tournament's done, he's just like, I'm going to Texas. Like at this late, can these players actually be like, you know what, I'm just going to go over to Texas. Like let me just get out of my signing and leave. Like I'm looking at Texas's rotation right now. They got Serge Abari Rice, Dylan DeSue, Brock Cunningham, Marcus Carr, Christian Bishop, Timmy Allen. All of them get very serious rotational minutes, and all of them are seniors. The only players on their team that are not seniors that actually get in are Dylan DeSue and Tyrese Hunter off the top of my head. Like they have maybe 2 players returning that get real rotational minutes for them. So that's definitely going to be a problem. Arterio Morris gets into, so I mean, that's another one. But, I mean, jumping ship could be a problem, but there's already going to be a lot of players gone anyway. So,
Just one last question that I wanted to bring up. What team do you think got snubbed by the selection committee? Like, they're in the tournament, but, like, you don't agree with their seed. You don't agree with, like, who they're playing.
Texas A&M.
Yes, that's
Yep,
the team that comes to mind.
absolutely. I'll also agree. Obviously, they didn't get in. Rutgers was a snub, but they just lost their first game as
Yeah.
the top seed at home. Like that was pathetic. So I mean, the selection committee's kind of got to have a happy smile for that one. But yeah, Texas A&M, I think they're really good. And that was tough.
Yeah, I know. And Kentucky's just had, like, they lost first round of the SEC tournament. And like we said, good wins, really bad losses. And Texas A&M's been playing really, really well. It's like, how do you give Kentucky, after how they've been playing the past month, how do you give them a 6 seed and then Texas A&M a 7 seed? And even then, you give them probably the best, like, hottest 10 seed in the tournament in Penn State. Like, genuinely, I think Penn State has Final Four potential.
Yeah.
And you're going to go ahead and you're going to be like, you know what, Texas A&M, we're going to give you a lower seed than what you deserve, and then we're going to give you the hardest matchup for that spot.
I would have flipped Utah State with Penn State on sides of the bracket because then you get Penn State, Missouri, which I feel like both of those teams were like bubble-ish teams. Yeah. But then the winner plays Arizona, and I think Penn State has a much better chance of matching up with Arizona compared to Utah State. Yes. And then you kind of gift Texas A&M a game against Utah. I still think Utah State's not bad, but Texas A&M expected to win that one, and then they get to go up against Texas in a massive rivalry game, and that would just be great. Whereas there's a very, very good chance Penn State's taking out A&M.
Yeah, not only that Texas A&M got a lower seed than they should have, if they get out of the Penn State matchup, which could not happen, they run immediately into Texas, and we all know how that can go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Texas A&M's kind of just like the little brothers. Like, there's some years that they get like they are better, but historically it's just Texas just trounces them.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think you were talking about Mizzou. I think Mizzou genuinely could be a pretty good team.
So I'm a Missouri fan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm scared against Utah State. I've
heard a lot of people saying Utah State might be something.
Utah State is favored in the game technically.
Really?
Yeah, and honestly, I think Mizzou kind of got like slided a little bit with their seed. Like, I know a lot of fans that were unhappy with being a 7. I mean, I don't know, maybe you move them up to a 6.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mind a 7 for them, but I think they're actually like pretty good for a 7 seed, like good value. I would say.
It's tough though because I'm looking at the 6s. I think Kentucky does deserve the 6. TCU, I think, deserves the 6.
Yeah, Creighton was pretty good.
Creighton deserves the 6. Iowa State, maybe not,
Iowa
but
State,
because of how good the Big 12 was, you kind of got to favor them a little bit there.
It's kind of the way that West Virginia got a 9, and they won not even 20 games.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, if you're looking at Mizzou, I mean, they lost to Arkansas. They beat Kentucky twice, if I'm not mistaken. Lost to Texas A&M. They beat Tennessee in the regular season in a nail-biter, and then they beat them in the tournament. Let's see. They
lost to Kansas by 28.
Yeah, that was not a good game to watch. I was not happy about that.
They lost to Texas A&M twice.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think a 7 seed is right just with how the season has gone. I just think they got screwed. I don't want to say screwed because it'll be a good matchup. I'm looking forward to it. Utah State could definitely hand it to us.
But I think you might have a better chance if you do get past Utah State of beating Arizona compared to some of those other teams. Obviously, Arizona I think is very, very good, and they have a massive guy, but they've had some weird games this season.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I don't watch enough Pac-12 as I probably should, but I don't want to stay up that late.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I'm looking. They lost to Oregon by 19. They split with Utah. They beat Tennessee by 5. They beat San Diego State by 17. They beat Creighton by 2, but that was, I think, during Creighton's stretch where they were struggling a little bit.
Yeah, they lost 6 in a row.
Yeah, so.
But I know that one of the biggest, back to Mizzou, I know that one of the biggest indicators, I guess, of not maybe upsets, but just like runs in general is the turnovers in your games. Like whether, you're turning it over a lot or like you're causing a lot of turnovers. Obviously, you want to force a lot of turnovers, not turn the ball over. I think out of the Power 5 conferences, Mizzou has forced the most amount of opponent turnovers out of every team, and they turn the ball over less than average. I think that that's a problem that like no one's going to want to face. Like if you look at the graph that I've got pulled up, you want to be as top right as possible, and they're not as right as you would like. I mean, there's some teams that turn the ball over less than 270 times, which is unbelievable, but they're forcing so many turnovers. It's like they're almost an outlier in this graph.
And that's the thing, too. It worked against Alabama in the semifinal of the SEC tournament. Like, we were neck and neck with Alabama the whole game, except we weren't getting any baskets on the other end. We were having empty possessions, and that's what I'm worried about. You can force these turnovers, but if you can't make anything come of it, then, you'll give Utah State a chance to bounce back, and then you just let it get away, and that's how you lose these games.
Yeah. Plus Utah, I'm looking. They have a junior and a senior. They have a junior guard and a senior forward, so having some age is going to help against some of those turnovers, or if maybe you draw a team that's maybe younger, you can get on them a little bit. But at the end of the day, Utah State hasn't played anybody. Yeah. So there's a chance they just haven't seen that. If you guys come out maybe like an aggressive full-court trapping press and you can get them off their rocks right off the beginning, get up maybe like 10 in the first 5 minutes, it may just be an absolute blowout from there.
And Mizzou might have gone cold, like they couldn't cash in on anything against Alabama, but on the year they shoot almost a little bit above 36%, like almost 37% from 3, which is above average, like in the Power 5. They shoot 76% from the free throw line, above average again. So I mean, the opportunities are there. It's just I guess it does really come down to like teams that are hot, teams that are like streaky, but consistently Mizzou has been a team that has shown some traits that can be very good. It's just some nights it's just not their night.
Yeah. It's just the NCAA tournament is basically our, bane of our existence. We haven't.
I'm a Purdue fan, so
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
I see what you're saying, but hold on a
But
second.
hey, our last chance to possibly win the tournament when we were a 2 seed and we lost to Norfolk State. That was embarrassing.
Yeah, we lost to
about
North Texas a couple years ago. We lost to St. Peter's last year. Yeah.
I'm just worried. That's all. And plus we got a very tough bracket, like on our end, like a tough run.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good teams in the South, actually.
Honestly, I know that like as a West Virginia fan, I'm gonna sound biased this, but I genuinely think that we could be pretty solid because when we're kind of a streaky team. Like I won't lie, Eric Stevenson takes a very large majority of our shots. I think he takes the 10th most amount of or the 10th highest share of a team's shots, but he's been hot recently. Like I think he's averaged over 23 and a half over our past like 7 games. We've had some good wins. We smoked Oklahoma State, only lost to Kansas by 2 at Kansas, and like I don't even know if they have a home loss this year. Beat Iowa State at Iowa State where they're damn near unbeatable. Beat Kansas State by 8 when they were ranked 11 in the nation. And even our other guys like Emmett Matthews, Keedy Johnson, they both really turned it up. I mean, it really, like you said, it's like Evan said earlier, it just comes down to one night and who.
Mhm.
If you're hot, you're hot. Like sometimes it's just not much the team can do about it. And West Virginia is a streaky team, and we're hot at the right time.
For the record, I have West Virginia in most of my brackets making out of the first round. So
Yeah, so
it's just they have to run into Alabama, which
The only thing that scares me with West Virginia is what Maryland team shows up. Which,
Yeah.
I mean, that goes the same for you guys as well. But, like,
Yeah.
Maryland has I think they beat Purdue, IU. They beat, like, especially at home. At home, Maryland was insane, and they kind of just destroyed the Big Ten when they played at home. So if the at-home Maryland team shows up, you guys might be in trouble. But if the road Maryland team shows up, I feel like you guys should have that one fine.
I sure hope so.
But then you get a run into Alabama, so.
Yeah, which sucks because like we're playing close. We're playing in Alabama, so it's like we'll go against Maryland. They got to travel, but then you get in the second round, you got Alabama at a home game,
Yeah.
which sucks. But I mean, this is gonna sound terrible, but as a West Virginia fan, I'm kind of hoping that someone's like, you know what, I am gonna press charges on Brandon Miller. He's just out for the game. I mean, like I said, terrible to say, but that would be great for my team possibly winning another game.
I
That's
don't
the
see
only
that
way I
happening.
see it happening.
Did you hear that he got armed guards for the
Yeah,
tournament? 'cause all
security
the
detail.
threats? Yeah.
Yeah.
Which makes me think he's going to play. There's no chance that he doesn't. I don't think at this point. I feel like if he wasn't going to play, then the school would have been the people to make that decision
Yeah.
earlier. And since they didn't make that decision earlier, there's no chance that he's getting held out for the tournament. And I'm not going to lie, Alabama's my pick to win it. They remind me of the Kentucky team back when they had Anthony Davis, because they have that one dude that's just insane, and then there's a lot of other very solid players around him that don't have to be insane every night because he's insane every night. But then you even look at that last game they just played. Brandon Miller struggled in the first half, and then their center guy had a great first half, and then Quinterly had a great first half. And then the second half, Brandon Miller hits like 4 straight threes, posterizes a guy, and then they blow the team out. So they look really good.
Realistically, who do you guys think is going to win? I know Evan just said Alabama, but what about you guys?
See, I want to say Alabama too, but if I was not, man, that's tough. Texas, I think Texas can do it.
Because I'm looking at mine right now, and I honestly would not be surprised if Baylor went all the way again.
Baylor struggles in the tournament. They won the other year, but
Yeah.
Baylor has lost a lot of
Yeah.
first-round bad upsets, and so I want to keep an eye on that. Plus, then they play Creighton, which Creighton
Yeah.
is just one of those weird teams that doesn't play like what Baylor plays or has seen before really this season.
And honestly, like Baylor takes a lot of tough shots. They average the most amount of points a game off of shots off of the dribble. I think it's like close to 20 points. It's like 15 to 20 points, somewhere in that range. And it's like, that's a lot of shots to be just like taking pull-ups or like off the dribble, stop and pop. Those are not easy shots by any means. And when you've got players like that, like you got Flagler, you got LJ Cryer, you got Jalen Bridges, you got
Keontae
Keontae George. Exactly.
Yeah.
I was saving him for last, best for last.
Yeah.
Like they've got the best backcourt, and then you've got Chama Chachua who comes back, great defensive
Yeah.
player. I mean, if those tough shots keep falling, which they've consistently have been doing, I
Yeah,
think they're
I
tough.
think they make
but
a good run.
I also could see them just
But when
running
those shots
into a
don't
problem.
fall, they lose to Iowa State 3 times in
Yeah,
one season. Like,
Exactly.
they've got some great wins. They beat UCLA, Gonzaga. They split with Kansas, split with Texas. They got blown out by 26 to Marquette. They lost twice to Kansas State, and Iowa State beat them 3 times. So they're just another team that it depends on which night. If they have a great tournament, they're going to have a great tournament. But one bad night, they could be out
Yeah.
quickly.
They're a little risky, but I think, like going off those points, I think if they can keep hitting those shots, which they have consistently done all year, I could see them definitely like in the big dance.
Plus, if Alabama goes down in some weird upset, you
Yeah.
guys are walking into the Final Four.
Mhm.
Because if they can get out of their little section, you're going to get Virginia or San Diego State most likely. Just
Yeah.
neither of them are
Neither
that
of them are too like.
no, those
wow.
are some weak 5 and 4 seeds.
Yes.
And honestly, like Jalen Bridges, I don't think he's fantastic, but I think he might be like an X factor because you know what you're going to get from other players. But Jalen Bridges is so like hot and cold one night. Like it's against ISU in the game they lost in the quarterfinals of the Big 12 championship. He went 10 for 11 from the field, 28 points, and then they lost. But then they also lost to ISU last game of the regular season. He had 5 points on 9 shots, 1 of 9. They have those good wins against Texas. He's 6 of 10, puts up 17, puts up 14 against Oklahoma State. Later on in the week, they win. It's just he plays bad teams and plays really good, and then plays against good teams and like rarely puts up a good game. So there are some games where he shows out and the team just looks fantastic. I really think that if he's hitting shots, then they're going to be a scary team to beat. Cole, you made a face.
This has nothing to do with March Madness, but Miles Sanders is signing with the Carolina Panthers.
Are we not going to
Interesting.
talk about how the Eagles are going to fall off a cliff
Yup.
this year?
Darius
I'm
Slay
here
is
for
gone.
it too. I'm here
Yeah.
for it too.
Cole's a
yeah, you
Cowboys
are.
fan. Yeah,
and
so-
so because they also lost Javon Hargrave, who was probably their best D tackle last year. They just lost T.J. Edwards, who was their best linebacker last year, and he went to the Bears. And now they just lost their best defensive back in Darius Slay. So,
Well, it's not like they really lost Darius Slay. They had him and cut him.
but still, you know what I'm
Because
saying.
they couldn't work out a new contract for
Yeah.
him. Which
And
this
then-
is what this is why it's so hard to repeat in the NFL. Because all your guys, you go really
Yep.
far, and then they all want money, and
Yep.
they
And
don't.
even-
they just run out of money.
Even
exactly.
Bradbury, it's like he was great for them last year too. He's probably not going to come back. I mean,
They re-signed him already.
oh, they did.
They
Oh,
already
okay.
But the reason people are thinking they are getting rid of Slay is because his contract is bigger than everyone else's. So they'll get rid of him, be able to sign Chauncey Gardner-Johnson back, and then draft another like young cornerback. I think like Devon Witherspoon because they have like an 8th overall pick, and then just basically rebuild what they just had. But their D line and their front seven is going to be awful with the 5 guys or however many it was that they've already lost.
I never actually officially gave my pick for the championship, but I'm looking and it's just one of those like I've made so many brackets and I do not have one repeat winner. Alabama, Jay Billis has said they're like Noah's Ark. They have 2 of everything, and they got a star player. They got a bunch of great players around him. I mean, I genuinely do think they have a chance to win the championship. I'm going region by region here. Arizona, I mean, kind of going back to the Houston thing. It's one of those where it's like there's not in a conference that traditionally wins. They choke. They could pull it out, and my bias might just be wiped out after that. But like I just don't really see a way that they make a run. Purdue, I think they have possibly what it takes. I mean, Evan would love to see it happen. I think they're constructed fantastic around Zach Edey. You have a bunch of dudes that are really like versatile, shoot the 3 well, 3-and-D wings, and you've got a guy that just holds it down in the paint and then is a fantastic passer while being 7'4". That's
Yeah,
huge.
I'm scared though. So obviously freshman guards, they've played great all season. Lawyer has not hit a shot in probably half of this season, and then, I mean, Caleb Smith or can't whatever his name is, Smith has been great. But freshman guards in a tournament, especially like I'm looking, we might play Memphis, and then there's a chance we play Duke. Those guards are going to give us fits. Our defense is not bad. It's offensively we can't handle pressure, and Memphis and Duke both have extremely athletic. Obviously, we beat Duke at the beginning, but that was not the same Duke team we're playing now. So that scares me early on. And then at the end of the day, if we hit wide open, if we would shoot 40% on wide open threes, nobody would beat us.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody would, and we hit
Not
free
lying.
throws at the end of the game because for some reason, we don't know how to shoot free throws or break a press. But I'm very, very nervous because we do have what it takes, and that's why it hurts. but
Yeah.
that's why it's very scary.
I'm looking, and I genuinely think that out of the 1s and 2 seeds, at least, I think Alabama, Purdue,
UCLA.
Texas, and Kansas have what it takes to win the championship. I don't think UCLA does it
I don't
because, like I said, I mean, Pac-12 teams are always like really good. They've got like a few like top end teams, like 3 teams there. They're just really good, and a bunch just a big fall off. But then they get into the tournament and they just fold. Like they do not play well. They're already missing one of their best players. Honestly, Kansas, like we didn't really talk about it much. It's so difficult to repeat.
Yes.
But you've got potentially National Player of the Year, Jalen Wilson. He's been insane. You got Grady Dick, who's probably the second best freshman in the nation behind Brandon Miller.
Yeah, Kansas. I feel like they can probably make a decent push, but whoever their point guard is, I forget his name, has looked horrible recently.
That DeJuan Harris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like at the
he's been
beginning, like I was watching a lot of Kansas games in the middle of
very
the
wild
season, and whenever he
turnovers.
scored like 10 or more points, they didn't lose. And then in all of their losses, he averaged like 2 points a game
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
5 turnovers or something like that. So if he can't play when they play, like I think they'll walk past Arkansas, Illinois. Illinois is never a good tournament team, so if they
Yeah.
somehow squeak one out there, and then what they get, UConn, St. Mary's probably.
I think
Probably
Iona
UConn.
could beat UConn. I don't know if we
I
talked
could
about
see
that.
that too.
I think it could happen, like
But
genuinely.
let's just say by numbers, most likely they're going to get UConn there.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they can walk past UConn pretty easily. Out of the bottom of the bracket, I don't see anybody good there. So I feel like Kansas has the best walk into a Final Four.
Yeah.
But after that, I don't really like them. I feel like at one point they're gonna have a day where they can't shoot. Who's their best player? I forget his name.
Jalen Wilson.
Yeah, Jalen Wilson's gonna have an off night, and they're not gonna figure out how to score because Grady Dick has not looked good recently either.
No, in both their losses to Texas, he's looked terrible, and they got trounced by Texas. Like I'm talking
It
30-point
was
L's.
bad. They got absolutely obliterated, and that's the problem. Like I look at a lot of these other teams, they can get down pretty quick, but they'll always sort of figure out a way to get back into the games. Kansas has had some bad losses.
Yeah,
If you can't keep it close, if you don't have it at the start, like Alabama didn't have it at the start, but they still were up at the end of that SEC championship game, and then they blew out the second half when they finally figured it out. Kansas, if they don't get going well, then they just kind of fall apart.
yeah. I mean, there's a good and bad side to being streaky. You know, sometimes you're like, oh, you know what? Like we're streaky, so we can bring this back. But you're also prone to just giving up runs. But if you're not streaky, you're like, oh, we're consistent. Say someone else goes up, puts up 15-0 run on you. How do you come back from that if you're just not capable of putting together those types of runs, which Kansas just has not really been this year. So, I mean, how often do you really see someone win a championship leading wire to wire in all 6 of their games? You just
Jeez.
don't really see it.
I'm looking at Howell. Obviously, they won their tournament, so that's how they got in. They lost to Kentucky by 32 and to Yale by 46 points.
Who is it?
Howard did?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
Believe in the Bison, all right?
I don't. How do you lose to Kentucky by 30? What was it again? 32.
I get it if you're like a small school, like they're an HBCU, I
lost to
believe, so they're not
Yale by
huge. But
46.
yeah, that's not great. That's not great. A bunch of computer
Yale's
engineering
not
kids are
good.
they're rolling out of calculus class and then spanking them. That's just not great for the ego. I won't lie. But genuinely, looking outside of the 1s and 2s, I'm looking around. I think Baylor maybe for a championship. I think Kansas State does genuinely have what it takes to win a championship. Duke possibly as a 5, possibly.
I hate saying that because I'm a UNC fan, but Duke is coming in very hot. I could genuinely see them.
And Tennessee
In
is
the Final
injured
Four.
right now. They don't
Yeah.
have Ziegler.
Yes.
Tennessee has not played phenomenal. And then
I don't
Purdue, again, you can beat Purdue. And then Marquette is going to be probably the biggest challenge out of that area, which
Yeah, I don't see
Marquette, so-
Tennessee making it.
Yeah, no.
I could see Tennessee making like a Sweet 16 just because they've got like I could see Oral Roberts upsetting Duke, but I could
Yes.
see Duke winning the championship. Like that's
yeah.
I think those are the only 2 results. I think if Duke wins in first round, they're going to at least the Elite 8, probably the Final Four, and maybe even the championship. But like
They
they're-
just need that first win.
it's almost the whole
I have-
region almost just hinges on that one game.
like
Yeah.
if I don't think they'll win the first game and then lose the second round and then or win the first 2 rounds and lose the third. I think it's first round or Elite 8 for Duke, to be completely honest.
I think there's around 7 or 8 teams that like could actually win it this year, and just I don't feel more confident in one than the other. I'm like, okay, I could see these 8 winning it, but it's not like I have one preference over the other. like every time I fill out a bracket or every time I think about it, I think of someone different, and I cannot make up my mind. So I feel like this year's just kind of scary if you're actually trying to win a bracket pool or if you're trying to bet money or you're rooting for someone. It's so hard to predict.
That's why I'm not even like I'm making a bunch of brackets. I want to be great, obviously, but I'm more interested in just watching a bunch of great basketball because like all season has just been weird upsets and teams going up and then falling apart. It's been a great up and down season, and so I'm more excited to just watch some upsets, watch some teams play close games or blowout games, and not really care about my bracket as much this year. Because you're right, there's so many teams like. I'm just going around. Alabama, obviously, very good chance. Virginia could, for some reason, just figure out how to be old Virginia and play defense and shut everybody down. They could be a weird team. Baylor, Arizona, both of them have shown spurts. And you got Purdue, Duke. Again, Tennessee could make some weird run even without their point guard. Kentucky, for some reason, who knows, could just go off. And no one can figure out how to guard Sheboy and Jacob Toppin. Kansas State, phenomenal team. Marquette. UCLA could maybe do something weird. Gonzaga could have another great year.
Yeah.
UConn. I mean,
I kind of forgot about
just so
Gonzaga.
many
I think
teams.
they do have a chance. I think they were. I'll say 9 that I think because I kind of didn't like include them in my mental list when I said that. But if you had to pick a team that's seeded 7 or higher, who do you not like higher as in like 7 or like a better seed like 7 or up? Who do you believe has the best chance to make a Final Four run?
Texas A&M. I think if they beat Texas, who are they going to lose to? If you can beat Texas, you're not going to lose to IU, Miami, or Houston, or whatever other team could come out of the top part of that bracket.
I'm thinking Penn State
I'm going Penn State too.
because Penn State is
So just
coming
whoever
in-
wins that game.
Yeah, honestly.
Penn State's coming
Austin?
in really hot.
I think you just keep an eye on all of the 12 seeds. Honestly,
Yeah.
Yep.
just all
12
the
seeds
12
are very
seeds
good
can
this
just
year.
make a run.
Mhm.
That's who I'd watch. But if the benchmark is 7, then it's obviously going to be Texas A&M.
Yeah.
I think they've been snubbed. But we talked
I mean,
about that.
I
Yeah.
could see Northwestern doing something. They have
Honestly,
two
same.
phenomenal guards. Boise State, I don't have any faith
Nope.
in them.
No.
UCLA, I don't have any faith in them.
Same.
Because Tiger Campbell is their best guard, right? And Boo
Yeah.
Buie is 10 times better than he is.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get out of that, you play probably Gonzaga. That's, again, you could beat them.
Yeah.
I mean, if Northwestern beat Purdue, they can beat Gonzaga. And then the hardest part of getting out of that part of the bracket is Kansas. But, again, Kansas has one off night, and your guards go nuts for Northwestern. They could make a crazy run.
Yeah, Penn State. This is, they're so hot. Like they're coming in just blistering. They've been playing so well. Jalen Pickett, 6'4", like 210 pounds. He plays big. Like he will post up anyone that is smaller than him. He will back them down. He's got good moves. And then you think like, oh well, why is he a point guard playing in the post? Like he can play outside too. Fantastic passer. They shoot the 3 so well. Like they shoot threes and free throws insanely well. So
That
it's like
white dude just literally throws it, and it just goes in.
Yeah.
That game against IU at the end where he literally just yanked one from the logo and drilled it. I mean, he reminds me of like a Ryan Klein, Stefanovic, shout out Purdue. But he reminds me of just one of those guys that like in the tournament, they just don't think anymore. They just start throwing the ball at the basket.
yeah.
And the only reason they lost to Purdue is because we had a 7'4" guy that just parked it in the paint the whole game. You're not going to have that against many of these other teams. So he's actually going to have success going into the paint and shooting those little turnarounds and post-ups. The only reason Pickett didn't get anything is because we just left Edey in there and because they had to play a big man, so then they didn't have a shooter somewhere else, and then Pickett could just ran into Edey whenever he tried to post someone up.
Yeah, Penn State shoots almost 39% from 3 as a team. That is good for about 3rd in the nation.
How many do they take? Because that's the thing. They're shooting 39, which some people are like, well, they're still under 40, but they're probably taking like 10 more than every other team in college basketball on average.
I will tell you that in a second if I could get this to load.
I'm going to take back my Penn State pick and go Oral Roberts because I think whoever wins that game between Oral Roberts and Duke can easily make an Elite 8 run.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
Max A. Smith
Yeah.
is averaging like 22 and a half a game.
Yeah.
He's absolutely ridiculous.
And he could do to Purdue what that guy from North Texas did the other year.
Penn State averages 27 threes a game.
There you go.
That is good for 13th in the nation. Surprisingly, there are actually a good amount of tournament teams like above them. You've got Charleston,
Well, that's because, Charleston's just one of those rip it.
Alabama,
Okay.
Oral Roberts, and Furman.
Okay, so it's other than Alabama, it's all
like the
those
12
just
seeds.
yeah,
Yeah.
smaller seeds.
Yeah, those small schools
that's-
that like that's how they win those.
yeah,
those
they're either
small
gonna. That's how
conferences,
they upset
let the
teams in the
threes
first
fly.
round of the tournament because they just don't miss a shot. It's like what was that team that beat Virginia the other year?
UMBC.
Yeah, the
UMBC.
Retrievers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they do. You just shoot a
Yeah.
crap load of threes and you'll win if you hit them, and you'll get destroyed if you don't.
Do you think we see another UMBC type? Like, do you think
No.
there's a 1 seed at risk?
I
of
don't know
losing
anything
this
about
No.
North Kentucky, but again, I think Houston's weak. I think
I would
Houston is
say
week.
Houston's probably the most vulnerable.
I know you're probably not worried as a 1 seed as Purdue, but FDU is blowing out Texas Southern right now. Don't know if you're worried about FDU.
No,
Texas Southern was
I'm not.
terrible. They're like 14-20. I don't even know how they even won their conference.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
got hot at the right time somehow.
Yeah.
Purdue has had problems closing out games and stretching leads against some teams, but at the beginning of the season when we played the lower seeds and stuff, it's just unfair. I don't know anything about FDU. I'm assuming they don't have anybody over 6'11" that can handle Edie, so I'm not too worried about that first round matchup. I think we'll be fine. Especially after coming off, since Purdue for some reason does not know how to play tournament basketball. The fact that we won the Big Ten tournament was that's more important to me than winning the Big Ten by 3 games.
Yeah.
Like winning that tournament, especially with how close some of those games were against Rutgers and Penn State, where we basically let them back into the game, but you closed it out. Those were some big wins that I think talked to Purdue more than they should have.
For what it's worth, the tallest guy on FDU is 6'7".
Okay, so
Purdue will win.
yeah, I don't really see them
45.
putting up much of a fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless they decide the basket's like 10 feet wide and they
Yeah.
can make every single 3 they take. I don't know anything about them. If they can press the crap out of us for an entire game so that we just can't get the ball past half court, maybe they'll have a chance, but no chance there.
Yeah, they shoot about 46% field goal percentage, 35% three-point percentage, 74% free throw percentage. They average 34 rebounds per game. Let's see. Looks like that's basically it. Genuinely, that's basically all the notable things you'd look at.
Yeah. To answer your question, no. I'm not too worried about it. I'm really interested in this 11 first 4 matchup. Where is that one?
Arizona State and Nevada. That'll be a good
Yeah,
one.
I think whoever wins that is probably going to beat TCU.
Really?
I do.
TCU is missing a starter. Eddie Lampkin just entered the transfer
'Cause
portal.
Arizona State, didn't they beat Arizona on that full court shot or half court shot or whatever, and Nevada sometimes has really good tournaments. So I could see them, either one of those teams, beating TCU, possibly beating Gonzaga. I don't think Gonzaga's worried about losing that first round. Grand Canyon's not anything too special.
One team that I possibly could see is as like a. I mean, I've only looked into a few 215s. Like, I haven't really I've kind of gone like in depth with one a little bit more, and the other ones, like you said, like North Kentucky, I don't know a whole lot about either. But I think that Colgate could possibly beat Texas. Like, I'm not saying that there's just like it's like, oh, I'm giving a 70-30. Like, I'm talking a 90-10. Like, I see a way that it happens. Texas relies on forcing so many turnovers. Like, they turn it over a lot. Colgate does not turn the ball over, and they are about average at forcing them. So, I mean, if Texas is just like pestering you and then they're just not phased, that's obviously going to be a problem, not what you're used to. And then Colgate plays slower than Texas. I think you slow it up. It's just where you see upsets happen, kind of where I talked about Kansas State, Montana State. You slow it up, hit some shots, don't turn it over. I mean, that's like obviously ideal game plan, but I feel like that's always what happens. It's just like the small seeds just are very fundamental and then just get ahead, and then the higher seed team just panics.
And
That
Colgate
scares me.
is also the best 3-point shooting team in the nation.
They are that, but they lost to
41%.
Auburn by 27.
They did do that, yeah.
They beat Syracuse by 12,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think that matters. Syracuse plays a zone and they shoot threes, so I don't think that's really
Yeah,
says much.
yeah. Syracuse just like, yeah, go ahead, shoot it on us. So I mean,
And that's probably what Colgate loved. As a shooter myself, yeah, zones are the best thing in the world because you just stand there, get your feet set, and launch.
yeah.
That's like, I feel like Charleston, San Diego State, Charleston's similar team to Colgate, whereas some of those teams, they just yank everything they see, and if they hit them, it's just an unbelievable team.
Yeah, San Diego State, I mean, I have looked into them, just not like a ton, like extensively, but knowing obviously 12 and 5 seeds I think are 12s are like outright just I think 500 or better against 5 seeds the last like 5 years. And obviously every year people talks about, oh, what's the 12-5 upset going to be this year? I think that genuinely Charleston has what it takes to do that.
I wouldn't be surprised if all 4 12 seeds
I wouldn't either.
win.
That would not
For
be
sure.
insane if that happened.
I'd honestly be more shocked if all 5 seeds won than all 12 seeds.
I would also agree with that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think like any iteration of it's like you see all 4 5s, all 4 12s, 1 and 3, 3 and 1, like whatever. I think whatever you see, I'm not going to be surprised. But it's just one of those like it's just so I don't know. It's 12 and 5 or something completely different. Like you have no other matchup that's like it.
Yeah.
Like even you look at 6 and 11 or 4 and 13, like it's just not the same. Like I don't get what it is about 5 and 12. I think it's always the really, really good small schools always get a 12 seed. So it's like they're probably deserving of a higher seed, but because they haven't played a whole lot, the committee's like, oh, just take a 12. So I think that might be what it is. Because like the 11 seeds are about where it ends for like at-large bids. So
Yep.
you normally see those really good conference winners take that 12. I think that's probably what it is. But it's just every year there seems to be just one that just waxes a 5.
I'm just waiting for the next Florida Gulf Coast team.
Same.
I want the Lob City team again.
That was awesome. That was definitely a good time. But anyone got closing thoughts? Players they think that you might need to watch out for?
I'm just ready to sit down and watch 12 hours of nonstop basketball.
Oh, same.
Yep.
Split
Absolutely.
screen, get the
Yeah.
TV on, and then
Yep.
split screen in the computer.
Yeah.
Hopefully my
on the
teachers aren't
phone.
listening to this, but like if I'm not in class tomorrow, it's because I'm sick. Definitely. That's not a joke. Like I'm 100% missing at least. Like I've got a few classes for the weekend. I'm missing before the weekends. I'm at least missing 2,
Nice.
no doubt.
Well, before we go, then I'm gonna get in my little golf thing. Go live. Go 4 aces. That's my team. Rolling with them. Dustin Johnson.
Respect. But West Virginia, gonna get my last kind of like shameless West Virginia plug in. I'm gonna go ahead and Eric Stevenson. Watch out for him. Tough shot maker, tough shot taker. He's the type of guy that'll walk down the court, pull a 3 in your face, and grab his nuts. Like it's kind of crazy. He's so electric. It's just unreal. But yeah, I just can't wait to watch some basketball. That's
March Madness is here, baby.
Yes, sir.
it
It's
is.
tournament time.
Greatest time of the year.
Yep.
With that being said, we would like to give a shout out to the producers of this podcast, the Crescent Magazine, student media. Go ahead and follow us on Instagram, Crescent Magazine. Follow us on Twitter, Crescent Magazine, MAGAZI1 at the end, first part Crescent. And then on Facebook, UE Crescent Magazine. Definitely follow the Instagram, giving updates, lots of stuff like going on around campus. They will have a lot out there. So make sure you're following, keeping along. Peace.